Evening, Dirty Girls, and welcome to Training Tuesday. Tonight's topic for Training Tuesday is 3 critical tools to build an amazing team. I love this topic. I really do. This is one of my favorite topics because this has actually been one of my favorite things to do in my corporate career is building teams. It's something that gives you just more satisfaction, I think, more scope, maybe than anything else you do in your job. Because when we get into our careers, we get really good at the skills, right? The things that we're supposed to be doing, right? The skills, for me, my background's marketing, so the skills of writing or of setting up advertising campaigns or working with influencers or doing PR, all that stuff. Those are all the skills of marketing. But when you start stepping into teams, not just participating in teams, but also leading teams, you get into a whole different kind of skill set, right? This isn't about the skill of how well can you do your job. This is really about the skill of how can you navigate working with other people, office politics, difficult personalities, right? All those pieces. And this is where your leadership skills really come into play. And it's irrelevant if you are a team leader, if you're a boss, if you're an individual contributor. Understanding and having the skills to build an amazing team is equally important to your success, regardless of where you fit. So, and hello, I'm happy to see everybody popping in and chiming in. Hey Joyce, hey Anna, how are you? Happy Tuesday, everybody. As always, welcome to Training Tuesday. As you guys are coming in, hey, it's Jill. As you guys are coming in, say hello, say where you're from. You guys are doing that, so that's fantastic. But I want to talk about teams tonight. This was actually the third most popular topic in the survey that I did a couple of weeks ago to kind of figure out what topics you guys wanted to address. So this one was pretty high up there in terms of skills, right? How do you build a connected, a high-performing team? And so I just want to reiterate, right? You don't have to be the boss or the leader to be able to influence and impact whether your team is truly performing well together or not. So I want to cover that, but I first want to start with just having you guys think about, like, if you've ever been on a really amazing team, if you have been on a truly connected team, right? You're probably still thinking about it and talking about it, even if it's been years. Because when we're part of a team like that, we all say the same thing. You know, we all talk about how those were the days. And when you're part of a high-performing team, you get all that good juju, right? There's all this high energy. There's all this productivity, and there's accomplishments you can point to. And when you can point to the accomplishments, you can point to how everybody's growing, everybody's learning. And there may be actual, like, career path growth happening also for the team. Everybody collaborates together, and typically everybody has fun, right? If you have the memory of a high-performing team or having been on just a really well-connected team, I'm willing to bet these are some of the things that come to mind. Right? You actually liked your job. And for me, certainly what happened was, as I found a high-performing team and became part of one and loved that experience, every job I went to next, I was looking for that same connection. I was looking for that same kind of experience. And you know what? It can be hard to find. It can be really hard to find. But the benefits when you do find one, right, they carry through your career, right? So if I look at my own career, right, the first truly, like, connected, high-performing team I belonged to was at a company years ago called Glasshouse. And that was over 15 years ago. To this day, those of us who were part of that company at that time still talk about how that was best job we ever had, best time of our lives, kind of thing. But it led to other effects, right? I left Glasshouse. I went on to another company and another company and another company. I've been on a few companies since then. But those threads of those connections from that high performing team followed me. And I became part of another high performing team. And then another one. And then the third one I became part of, half of the members were from that very first team at Glass House. What it does when you become part of a high performing team is it builds your network. So I took a job at Glass House. I moved on to ASG. From ASG, if you look at my LinkedIn profile, you'll see this. From ASG, I went to ACI, then I went to Billtrust. At Billtrust, I worked for the same guy who I worked for at ASG. And then I went to Mobiquity, where I worked for the same people that I worked for at Glass House. And then I did some freelance work for some of the people from actually all of my past lives. And today's corporate role is at a company where I'm working for people from yet another past life. Working for high-performing teams builds your network first and foremost, which carries you throughout your career, because not only do you carry your singular reputation, but you carry the reputation for being part of that high-performing team. And every time we move on in our career, and anytime someone in our network moves on in their career, what do we want to do? We want to recreate that. We want to, what do they refer to it? Get the band back together. But we do, because we know what? We know the quality of the work we can do together. When you're part of an amazing team, that's what you build. You build up your strengths. You support each other throughout your weaknesses. You trust each other, which is part of what has you circling back around and working with some of the same groups of people over and over again. It's not because the industry I'm in is particularly small. It's not. In fact, my industry is kind of big, right? I work in technology. Everything's technology. It's the fact that I've worked with groups of people and we've worked well together that keeps us in this tight network where we keep reforming high-powered teams, connected teams, teams that are having fun, because we know we can rely on the person to do the job and do it well, because we've built that trust, because we've shown that we're resilient. So remember a couple weeks ago, and I talk about this a lot in these trainings, so it's a common theme, right? I talked about who are the 5 people closest to you. I talked about the crab bucket, right? Who keeps us in the crab bucket? The team around you at work is part of that, right? At work, it's your team. Who are the 5 people around you at work? And are they on your team? Are they truly people you trust, you collaborate with, you support, they support you? You work together to work through the knotholes, right, of the corporate world. This is what I'm talking about. So I want you to contrast that with, have you ever been on a terrible team? Have you ever been on a mediocre team? I think we've all been on those. If nothing else, we've had those wonderful group projects at school, right? So, hey, Julie, I'm glad to see you've joined us. So drop for me in the chat, if you will, ladies. What was it like being on a team that didn't gel, that didn't connect, that wasn't particularly high performing, right? If you've ever been on a team that has not truly figured out a way to connect or work together, what happens? So if you're willing to share in the chat, drop for me, for you, what happens? I can tell you for me, at one of those businesses I listed, I would say our team wasn't a terrible team, but we were not well connected. We were not great collaborators. Draining, yes, Jill, and that's exactly what it was. It was draining. It was an effort to get anything done. And we weren't even fighting. We just hadn't built that trust and that connection, and it just took forever to get things done. Julie, stressful. Yeah, not wanting to go to work, looking over your politics, right? Office politics come into play, and suddenly nobody wants to go to work. Discouraging, absolutely, Joyce. Watching your back, yep. It does make you feel like you've taken 1,000 steps back. And hey, Sue, and it does feel toxic. Yes, all those things. And what ends up happening, we get demoralized, we get tired. We're not bringing our best energy. We're not bringing our A game to the table. And to me, kind of the worst part of it is we start questioning ourselves. We start thinking, it must be me. There's something I'm not doing right. There's something I could be doing better. And there you go, Anna. And sometimes you question your leadership skills. Exactly. You start questioning yourself because what happens in that kind of environment, right, is that self-confidence just starts getting eroded away. And something you're like, maybe it is me. Maybe everybody else is doing just fine and I'm the one who's screwing up, or I'm the one who's not invested. And so if I could just bring a little more to the table, then it would all be better. Right? We put all that burden on our own shoulders. The other thing that's interesting, you can have high performing teams in low performing environments. They don't last long, I will tell you that, but I've seen it. I have been in a company that I would say had been doing great. There was a situation, they got acquired essentially, and then they started to not do great. And the high performing team that was part of the responsibility for doing great was continued to be a high performing team, but in this new environment, it was harder for them to be successful. There was a lot more office politics going on, and over the course of the next year, that team, it just dissolved. And what was an amazing, connected, high performing team went away. And that company doesn't have that team anymore. But they can exist, and it just means they exist in pockets. And if the company culture doesn't survive to support them, doesn't become a culture that supports high performing teams, you lose them. They go away. It doesn't guarantee success. However, there's hope that wherever you're at, you can create a high performing team. And when you see high performing teams in play, it often inspires other teams to do the same. So it is something that can shift a culture if you have a culture open to that. Ideally, you're working in a place that's already well suited for this, and you're just building on and supporting. So I said that there were 3 critical pieces, right, to high performing teams. And those 3 key things, right, the 3 tools you need are safety, success, and shared leadership. So safety, success, and shared leadership are your 3 tools. And I'm going to talk through each one of them a little bit. So first of all, safety. First and foremost, when it comes to leadership, it's about trust. We have to create a safe environment for the team. Now, as I said at the beginning, right, it can be, you don't have to be the leader. You don't have to be the ringleader. You don't have to be the boss in order to help implement this. But it is important, if you're going to build a connected, high-performing team, that they trust each other and that they feel like it's a safe environment, emotional and physical. Because for women, I know men don't think about this, but we actually have a pretty high physical safety factor that's hardwired into us, honestly. And so you want to be someplace that feels safe emotionally as well as physically. And we can actually create the emotional safety through physical environments too. So for example, if you're working with a team and you've got, for cross-functional roles, you've got somebody from finance and somebody from customer success and somebody from sales and somebody from marketing, right, all in on this conversation, somebody from product, you meet on neutral ground, right? The idea is that you pick the office cafeteria. You pick a conference room that's not in anybody's department. You go off site, but you pick some place where it doesn't feel like someone in the room or a couple people in the room have the home field advantage. That's a little bit of your physical safety, but that's also a little bit of your emotional and mental safety as well. Neutral territory. If it's an online meeting, we're doing so much more of that these days. Creating a safe environment online means cameras on. You can see each other. You're trusting that we're not just multitasking and checking our email and tuning out. I know we all do it, but we should really minimize that in a meeting. That we practice things like muting when we're not speaking, right? Allowing the other person to speak. We use the tools in the Zoom or the Teams, whatever online channel you're using, where we raise our hand, or we use reactions to support each other, or we use the chat to ask questions. Because sometimes in the live environments, right, if people speak over each other, it mutes out everybody. Very ineffective way to communicate. And you establish ground rules. And that's probably one of the most important things. One of the most important things you can do to create a safe space is have the ground rules. This is what it means for us to have a civil meeting. There won't be interruptions. There will be no sidebar conversations. Everybody puts their phone on silent. There's an agenda. We're going to stick to the agenda. You can choose what the rules are if it's your meeting, or you can collaborate with the meeting leader. But for a safe space, clear rules around how this meeting is being conducted and what's expected is really important. It's for the same reason we teach our children rules. We teach them manners. It's so that we engage with each other in a positive way, in an appreciative way. As adults, we sometimes assume and presume so much that we forget. And then we interrupt, and then we're checking our phone, and we're a little unconscious in our behaviors that send signals of disrespect to other people in the room. And it may not be intended as disrespect. It could be literally unconscious poor behavior, granted, but unconscious poor behavior. So being clear about these are the ground rules for the meeting. So I appreciate you all coming to my meeting. Here's the agenda for the meeting. Here are the ground rules for the meeting. No interruptions. Please have your phone on silent. Please read the material in advance. Please be prepared to participate. Reiterate the rules when they come to the meeting, and then you enforce them. So if somebody has their camera off, you ask them to turn it on unless they have a really good reason why. If somebody's interrupting, you stop them and say, excuse me, we agreed to no interruptions in this meeting. Please let so-and-so finish. You have to be the enforcer. And we're often uncomfortable in that role because we think it's going to make us look like the bad guy or we're not nice. But what you're doing is you are creating the boundaries for this is how respectful communication happens. And it requires us to hold our boundaries. So without a safe space, you do not have a high-performing team. You do not have a team that will connect. They need to feel they can trust each other. They need to feel they can collaborate, they can disagree, and they can work through problems. So it's important that you have both physically and emotionally, and mostly emotionally, given that meetings are more online, that you have a safe space. So if you have any questions about safe spaces, feel free to pop them in the chat while we're going here. I'm happy to address questions as we go along, but that's your number one tool, is creating that safe space. And again, if you are not the meeting leader, if you're not leading a team, you can still help create this. Whether you collaborate with the leader, whether you throw it out there to the entire team as, hey, this is something I'd like to set up for us so that we work better together. It doesn't stop you from being a leader just because you don't have that title. Now, the second tool I mentioned was success. How is success a tool? Success is a tool when you create it early in the relationship. So even a really small success for a team that's worked together can go a long way to helping a team create those bonds that help them build more and more success together. So what happens when we set the stage for building success is that we've created this foundation for people to grow. They learn to trust each other. They learn a little bit more about each other and how the other person works. So it's a little easier to navigate as we keep working through projects. If you do something that gives a small early victory, right? We refer to this in corporate America, right? That what's the low-hanging fruit? I kind of hate that phrase, to be perfectly honest, but for those of you who are in corporate America, you know what it means, right? The low-hanging fruit is what can we grab and claim early victory on? So claim victory, share the victory. The team has done it. And when you can do that, when you can claim victory, it inspires the team to do more. That creates momentum. So how do you create those small early victories to help build the team connection? This works whether your team has been working together but just not great for a long time, or whether they're brand new to each other, or you have people been working together and there's a new person involved. I'm going to share with you what's called the Big Easy Matrix, and that is a great way to get that quick win in so that you're building that trust and that momentum with your team. So the Big Easy Matrix, it's a 2x2. It's a 2x2 matrix. It's from a book called Strategic Doing, which is about agile leadership skills. And this is one of the ones they recommend, and I really like this one. So here's what you do. You've got your team together. You guys have a project. You have a goal, right? You have something you have to accomplish. So define first, what's the goal? What is it our team is here to do? So let's just say in my world, right, the goal is to generate revenue for the company through marketing campaigns. Okay, we have to create a marketing campaign. What are all the things I can do to achieve that goal? I can run email, I can run digital ads, like, right? We list all the things. What we're going to do next to them is plot them on the 2x2 matrix. So if you don't know, I tried to print this to see if I can show you. This is a 2x2 matrix. It's a square. It's a square. And it's a square that says, here is what's easy to implement. Easy to implement. And here's what's going to have the most impact. And those are the two key questions you ask. When you look at all the different ideas that your teams come up with, what is going to have the most impact to get you close to your goal? And what's the easiest thing for the team to do? The easiest thing for them to accomplish. And what you do is you take your ideas with those two questions in mind and you plot them on the matrix. You plot them on the, where they, oh, I got it upside down. Sorry, ladies. You plot them on the, ta-da! This is where I need a whiteboard. This is where Facebook Live needs a tool where I can whiteboard. I haven't found that yet, if that exists. But you plot it on the matrix, right? What is the easy to implement ones? These ones are easy to implement. What are the ones with the most impact? These are the most impact. These are easy to implement with the most impact. That's where you start. Easy to implement with the most impact is where you start. Top right wins. Then you get your team together and you do it, and then you celebrate it, and then you move on to the next thing, the next task in that top right corner, and you work your way, because as you guys achieve the easy wins, you build the trust, you build the confidence, you build the connections with each other, you get to know how each other works, you build the momentum so that you can do the harder tasks, the bigger projects, the more complex ones as they come. So I'm going to give you a quick story that was illustrated in the book. Again, the book's called Strategic Doing. It's about agile leadership. It's a great book. It was written by like a dozen engineers or something, but it's amazing. And in fact, one of you actually in my Doodle Girl community sent it to me, and it was a great read. So thank you. But one of the examples they gave was how there was this town government, town commission. And they were trying to gentrify a neighborhood. There was a neighborhood that had just been not well kept, was very run down, was a little bit skeevy. People didn't like going there. And the town was like, we have to figure out a way. This is part of our downtown area. We have to figure a way to bring this back. And of course, there was tons of infighting, because whenever it comes to gentrifying and beautifying a downtown area, local politics get involved, and then you have community groups involved, and everybody's fighting, and nobody has budget, right? So they eventually had a consultant come in and said, listen, we're going to do this big easy matrix, and we're going to figure out, we got to do something and build the momentum from there. And this consultant convinced them to go through the exercise. She took it like a subcommittee, a task force out of the whole government, from private sector, created a task force. And when they did the big easy matrix, what they came down to was they spent a weekend, this group, small group, I think there was probably a dozen people altogether, spent a weekend putting planters along the street. In that neighborhood, they simply went and took planters, and they talked to local artisans, and then they talked to local nurseries, and they got the plants, and they basically spent a Saturday setting the planters on the sidewalks and in locations in front of homes and shops, planting fresh plants in there, making it pretty and green. Really easy thing to do. It took them an afternoon. That was their big easy win. Because what did that do? It not only cleaned up the sidewalks and made them pretty, but suddenly visually it became far more appealing for people walking downtown to head down that street. It didn't look so scary with the new greenery freshly planted. The people living on the street and working on that street suddenly had more pride in their street, and they took more care of the outdoor area, and they started cleaning it up. It created a natural grassroots efforts of, let's take care of this and let's all work together. And that one Saturday, working on that one win, when they saw the community reaction to it, built the momentum for them to do larger projects throughout the downtown area and to get funding for those projects, to do more to help gentrify and beautify their city. So it can take a very simple, small thing to build that commitment and connection among a team. So you need success. All right. The third thing I mentioned was shared leadership. So we have safety, we have success, and we have shared leadership. And I saved shared leadership for last because it's probably the most difficult part. It's the part where we have to let go of a little bit of control. So shared leadership is a term from Marshall Goldsmith. Marshall Goldsmith has written a ton of books on leadership and leadership skills development. So any book you pick up that has his name in it, it's probably a pretty good read. Shared leadership is where everyone on the team feels like they're a part of it. They have a role to play, they have a job to do, they have a contribution to make. And the key with the shared leadership is they know what it is. So in particular, if you are the leader of a team, and again, whether this is you're a leader of a team because they work for you, or you're the leader of a team because you have peers that you have to corral into getting a project done for the company, creating a shared leadership model is easily your strongest tool for building connection and success. You need the safe space, that's a given. That's table stakes. The Big Easy Matrix is a great tool for helping you get to success quickly, if that's what you need to do. But shared leadership is really where the connection happens and the trust happens, because this is where you, as a leader, show trust. So in shared leadership, a couple things happen. First of all, individuals on the team have power to make decisions. Now, the group leader or the project leader may be able to define them, not may be able, needs to define what decisions are they empowered to make and what are the boundaries of that decision. So for example, you've got a team working on a project and Mary owns one piece of the project. You're doing an event and Mary owns decor for the event. Mary is empowered to go find the vendors she wants to help decorate, to decorate with whatever colors she wants. Mary's boundary or parameter may be, hey Mary, you can't spend more than $5,000. But you have empowered her to do the job. Just like you've empowered Jane to figure out how are we going to get people to attend the event. And Jane's going to figure out what are the marketing tools and strategies we're going to use to get people to come to the event. But Jane, your parameter is your marketing campaign can't cost more than $2,000. Or we can't have more than 500 people. Or we have to have a minimum, right? There are parameters around the choices that they make, but it has to be clear. This is your role. You have autonomy to make decisions and to go do this your way, but the goals of what we need to get to are clear. So you as the leader empower the team members to do their jobs, and you cannot second guess their decisions. When we second guess people, they immediately interpret that as undermining, and we've lost their trust and credibility. We haven't empowered them at all if we're always going to micromanage and second guess. So if you're telling them how to do the job and you keep suggesting different ways they should be doing their job, you are not actually trusting them to do the job. So this is where we as leaders, because we as women leaders sometimes fall in the category of perfectionist. And when our perfectionist gremlins start speaking up, we feel very much like we have to do all the things because if we don't, it won't get done right. You can't lead. You can't lead if you're doing all the things. It's not possible. That's not leadership. That's doingship. You cannot lead if you're doing all the things. Leadership is identifying where are the strengths and letting those strengths blossom. Where are the weaknesses and how do we shore those up? But it doesn't mean you're doing all the things. You are empowering the team to do their things. Team leaders, successful team leaders, are a resource. They are not a supervisor. You are not there to stand over everybody to tell them what to do. You are the resource to help guide how is this whole project going to work out? How are these dots going to connect? And how are we going to get to success? Now, key to this, if you're going to go empower everybody and let them run off and do the thing, it doesn't mean you have no control. It doesn't mean you have no control, because you're still accountable for making sure everything happens, right? Still responsible for making sure that event goes off without a hitch, which means you need a process in place to review, assess, and adjust. And there are tons of tools out there for how you run projects and processes to be able to do that. But it does require trust, which is probably the scariest thing we have to offer our team, is to trust them. But the review and assess and adjust process is one for transparency, which means everybody's required to participate, to be transparent, so that we're all successful. So it requires everybody to trust everyone else on the team. So this is why, if you've been, especially in the tech world in the last 10 years, agile processes are so popular, right? I just mentioned a book called Agile Leadership, right? Agile processes are, Agile was a way for developing software that was created so that software companies could reiterate quickly, fix bugs, and keep the software moving forward. And we've taken that concept and it's moved to general leadership categories. So in an agile leadership environment, what you might do is the 15-minute stand-up, so that every day the team meets for 15 minutes. And it's actually a very structured format for 15 minutes, where you just hit top priority for the day. This is what I'm focused on. This is my dependency. And you move on to the next person. And in 15 minutes, everyone on the team has shared what they're working on, what's worked, what their roadblock is, what's happening next. It's a very quick meeting, but allows the team to stay connected, so that if there is an issue, it gets flagged early, it gets addressed early, so it doesn't become a big gnarly problem later. Now, Agile's 15-minute stand-up is one way to keep that oversight in your process, as you're allowing everybody to have autonomy and freedom to manage their way. You could also have a project manager, right? Maybe there's a separate project. The whole point of a project manager is that they are independent of the project, which is why they get to be an objective voice in helping you manage timelines and goals. There could be a checklist or a spreadsheet, right? There's all kinds of tools you can use to keep the team on track and to provide visibility. And you want that process in place at the same time that you're trusting the team to do their job. This is part of the safe space development too, right? If everybody can flag their questions or their concerns in a safe space, you're far more likely to identify it early and get on top of it before it becomes like a major problem later. So, safety, success, and shared leadership. Those are your three tools if you're going to build a high-performing, connected team. Key ingredients, because we know from our own experience, right? We feel valued when we are trusted and we are supported. And when we feel valued, trusted, and supported, we go above and beyond. We really do. We do our best to ensure success, not just for ourselves, but for the entire team, for the entire company. It is up to us as leaders to extend the hand of trust first. To be the first ones to say, I'm going to trust you to do your job. I'm going to have a process in place so I can verify that we're on track to hitting our goals, but I'm going to trust you to do the job. I'm going to trust that should we fail or come up with a roadblock, we're going to be able to mitigate that risk. I'm going to trust that we're going to build these connections so that we're going to do even more amazing work later. So safety, right? Creating that safe space and that safe environment. Success, getting to small wins quickly so the team bonds together. Shared leadership, trusting the team to do what they're accountable for. All right, and those are your 3 secrets to building an amazing team. So thank you for joining me for Training Tuesday tonight. If you would like to dig deeper into building your team or working on the shared leadership piece and understanding how to implement that, or any of the pieces of this, then I would like to invite you to a Dirty Girl Mini Dig. That's the free 15-minute coaching call where we focus just on you and the particular aspect you would like to dig into. to help you move your career forward faster. So the 15-minute mini dig, you just have to drop the word dig in the chat and I will reach out to you and we will set up that time to talk. Just a coaching call. It's not a sales call. Our sole focus is helping you dig a little deeper into the challenge that you're facing today and helping you take that next step. All right. Have a fantastic Training Tuesday. Thank you, ladies, as always, for joining me. Thank you for your comments. I appreciate it. You all have a fantastic night.